18 May 2019, Goblin Valley State Park Visitor Center, Utah. Security footage shows Dana Reynolds, 34, signing the day-use trail register at 09:42 a.m. The ink smudges slightly, humidity from early desert rain. She buys a bottle of water and a map, leaving a credit card receipt time-stamped 09/48/17. The ranger notes a routine exchange, sunscreen request, polite laugh, no sign of distress. Outside, wind whips the red dust across the parking lot. A camcorder feed from a tourist bus records her briefly, bright pack earbuds in, walking toward the Entrada Canyon trailhead. Audio, footsteps, laughter, faint pop of a camera shutter. By 15:35, her vehicle remains in the lot. The day cools. The park gate closes at 20:00. That's the last confirmed trace. In the incident file, line 1.3.02 reads, "Subject departed on foot, direction unknown, no confirmed return." What began as a Saturday hike became a 3-year investigation. At 09:43 on May 18, 2019, Dana Reynolds signed her name in the Goblin Valley Trail Register with firm, steady handwriting. Ranger Mark Dorsey observed her from behind the information counter, noting nothing unusual in her demeanor. The register entry photographed later for the case file shows her planned route, Entrada Loop, written beside her name in blue ballpoint ink. Looked like any weekend hiker, Dorsey told investigators 4 days later. Good boots, appropriate pack, water bottle in the side pocket. Asked about trail conditions, mentioned the morning rain. The graphite of previous entries ghosted beneath her signature. A desert silence hung in the air, punctuated by the warm wind whipping around the red bluff outside. 3 other hikers signed in after her, their entries documenting her presence through adjacent ink. The visitor center's 10 a.m. weather log recorded clear conditions, 78 degrees, wind from the southwest at 12 mpre. Perfect hiking weather. Nobody would search for her until the following evening. Ink retained her presence longer than memory did. On May 17, 2019, Dana Reynolds checked into room 119 at the River Terrace Inn in Green River, Utah, 50 miles from Goblin Valley State Park. Hotel security footage captured her arrival at 16:22, checking in with a roller suitcase and a bright red backpack. The desk clerk later recalled her asking about cell reception in the park. "She was methodical," said James Webb, her colleague from the Denver accounting firm where Dana worked as a senior auditor. In his statement to investigators, Webb explained that Reynolds had planned this trip for months. She'd researched the trails extensively. It was her first solo overnight hike, but she'd been building up to it with day hikes around Colorado. In her hotel room, surveillance camera footage shows Reynolds at 19:45 laying out her equipment on the bed: tent, sleeping bag, camp stove, first aid kit. The air conditioner hummed steadily. On the nightstand, her phone charged beside a printed map. The muted TV showed a weather forecast predicting clear conditions throughout the weekend. According to Webb's statement, Reynolds had mentioned trouble with her hiking app the week before. She said the GPS was glitching on her last practice hike in Boulder. That's why she printed backup maps. This detail later puzzled investigators. If she had concerns about her navigation tools, why proceed alone? Reynolds' meticulous preparation was documented in her own text messages, retrieved later from cloud storage. At 2017, she sent a photo of her packed bag to her sister Sarah with the message, "All set for tomorrow. 12-mile loop, should be back at the car by 4 p.m. We'll text when I'm out." The hotel's front desk surveillance captured her final departure at 08:05 the following morning. The footage shows Reynolds adjusting her pack straps, checking her water bottle, and briefly looking at her phone. Normal preparations for a day outdoors. Her credit card was charged for one night's stay. When protocol is flawless, absence becomes impossible to explain. Between 10:15 and 15 ER on May 18, 2019, Dana Reynolds disappeared. This 5-hour window, the vanishing interval, has been the subject of intensive analysis, yielding more questions than answers. At 10:12 a.m., Reynolds's phone pinged a cell tower near the park entrance. At 11:23 a.m., her device connected briefly to a distant tower near Wild Horse Wash, approximately 3 miles into her hike. This was the last electronic evidence of her movement. The signal pattern indicates normal trail progress until approximately 11:30, explained cellular analyst Lieutenant Maria Garcia during the initial search operation briefing on May 20th. After that, we have no further connections from the device. Battery depletion, power down, or signal obstruction are all possible explanations. The isolated terrain created natural communication barriers. Static crackled through radio transmissions as search teams later combed the area. The shifting sand of the wash revealed no clear footprints when examined 3 days later. Helicopter blades thumped in the distance as aerial teams scanned ridge lines and gullies. According to park records, 8 other hikers signed out for the Entrada Loop Trail that morning. None reported seeing Reynolds beyond the first mile marker. Tourist photographs collected during the investigation inadvertently captured several trail sections throughout the day. Reynolds appears in none of them. After 10:20 a.m., at 15:35, Park Ranger Thomas Wilkes noted Reynolds' vehicle still in the parking lot during routine patrol. The 2017 Honda CR-V remained there overnight. The park gate closed at 20 Q without her exit being recorded. The transitional weather that afternoon, from clear skies to gathering clouds, meant that most hikers returned early. The visitor log shows 7 of 8 hikers checking out by 14:45. Only Reynolds remained unaccounted for. On May 19th at 8:15 a.m., when the morning shift ranger opened the visitor center, her vehicle remained in the lot. At 16:30, when she failed to report to work in Denver as scheduled, her supervisor called her emergency contact, her sister, Sarah Reynolds. By then, Dana had been missing for over 24 hours. In terrain where summer temperatures routinely exceed 95-degree range by midday, standard search and rescue protocols in Utah wilderness areas recommend activation after 48 hours for experienced hikers without medical conditions. This guideline would later be revised following the Reynolds case. Signal terminated, subject did not. On May 19, 2019, at 19:12, Sarah Reynolds called the Emery County Sheriff's Office to report her sister missing. The dispatcher's notes indicate initial classification as a delayed hiker, common enough in the spring season when weather can extend trips unexpectedly. By 22, when Reynolds' vehicle had remained in the park lot for over 36 hours, Sheriff Randall K. authorized preliminary search action for the following morning. "We initiated under cautious protocols," Sheriff K. later testified. "Vehicle presence without distress signals usually indicates a survivable delay, not disappearance." The Field Operations Log. As AR Unit 47 documents initial mobilization at 05:30 on May 20th, radio chatter filled the command post established in the visitor center parking lot. The diesel smell of generators powering search equipment mingled with the early morning chill that hung over the canyon rim. Day visitors arrived to find restricted access and emergency vehicles. The first operational period covered the established trails with teams of 4 personnel each. By midday, as temperatures climbed and no evidence emerged, Kay expanded the search to include off-trail areas within a 1-mile radius of the Entrada Loop. "In desert terrain, we look for anomalies," explained Search Coordinator Deputy Linda Blackwell in her case summary. "Disturbed soil patterns, equipment fragments, unusual animal behavior. The landscape records human passage differently than forested areas." At 14:22 on May 20th, a search team recovered a water bottle cap matching the brand purchased by Reynolds at the visitor center. Found approximately 2.5 miles into the trail, it was bagged as potential evidence, but later determined to be unrelated to the case. The manufacturing date stamped inside placed it from a previous month. The operations log notes the systematic elimination of grid sections 1 through 7 by sunset on May 20th, covering approximately 60% of the official trail system. The remaining sections required technical climbing equipment to access safely. Sarah Reynolds arrived at the command post at 18:45 that evening. The incident log notes her providing additional information. Dana had been taking a mild antidepressant, had recently ended a long-term relationship, but had shown no signs of distress or unusual behavior. She brought photos and a detailed description of her sister's clothing and equipment. Search dogs were deployed at first light on May 21st. Kay's handwritten note in the margin of the deployment order reads, "Weather window closing. Forecast shows Stormfront Thursday. Expedite full resource activation." The formal SAR Unit 47 activation documentation, time-stamped EU08-15 on May 21st, upgraded the case from delayed hiker to missing person, environmental danger. This reclassification triggered multi-agency resources, including helicopter support from the Utah Department of Public Safety. Grid 14 was combed. Belief held another day. Between May 21st and 23, search operations expanded to include aerial reconnaissance. Civil Air Patrol pilot Edna Pike logged 7.4 flight hours over the primary and secondary search areas in a Cessna 182 equipped with observation cameras. The rotor echo of Utah DPS helicopters bounced between canyon walls as they hovered over potential locations. Terrain challenges visual confirmation, Pike noted in her flight log. Shadows from rock formations create false positives. Every dark spot becomes a potential backpack or clothing item. Forward-looking infrared FLIR. Technology deployed by helicopter teams on the evening of May 22nd detected 3 heat signatures in the expanded search area. The glare of monitor screens in the mobile command post showed bright white spots against the cooler landscape. Dry static crackled over communications as ground teams were dispatched to investigate. All 3 signatures were identified as geological features, sandstone formations that retained daytime heat into the night hours. The FLIR scan report filed at 23:40 on May 22nd documented possible heat signature, negative confirmation. Technical limitations in the rocky landscape were noted as a significant hindrance to thermal imaging effectiveness. By May 23rd, the search effort had grown to include 42 ground personnel, 4 dogs, 2 helicopters, and 1 fixed-wing aircraft. Weather conditions deteriorated throughout the day, with winds reaching 30 mph and gusts driving sand and dust across the search grid. Visibility dropped below 1 mile by mid-afternoon. Search team leader Marcus Phillips documented in his field notes, "Wind erasing track evidence, surface signs older than 12 hours now undetectable, time working against us." Statistical profiles of wilderness disappearances were consulted. The incident command post displayed a chart showing survival probability decreasing to 38% after the 5th day without water. Reynolds was now entering that window. Volunteer tracker Jim Stillman, who joined the search on May 23rd, later told investigators, "There were areas where the sand was so disturbed by wind you couldn't tell if someone had walked through 5 minutes ago or 5 days ago. The desert kept rewriting itself." The 3-day operational summary, submitted to the Emery County Sheriff, listed 78 person days of searching, 1,165 acres covered, and 0 definitive evidence discovered. The document concluded with a recommendation to transition from emergency search to systematic investigation. If no significant discoveries occurred, within the next 36 hours. That evening, search dogs lost effectiveness as high winds scattered scent particles beyond reliable tracking thresholds. Handler notes indicate one dog, a German Shepherd named Rex, showed brief interest in an area near a slot canyon 2 miles off the main trail, but was unable to establish a consistent direction. Infrared saw only rock-breathing heat. On May 24, 2019, as the search entered its fourth day, Sarah Reynolds established what search personnel called the family perimeter, a constant presence at the command post and active participation in decision-making. Her voicemail to the ranger station preserved in the case file reveals the growing emotional toll. "It's been 5 days now. I know she's out there. Dana is careful. She wouldn't just... I'm bringing her hiking partners from Denver. We know what to look for." The electronic beep of the voicemail system punctuated her message with clinical precision. Throughout the day, family members and friends gathered around a table in the visitor center, the rustle of paper maps a constant backdrop as they traced potential routes and theories. Outside, engines idled under a pale sky as search teams rotated through assignments. Sarah, a nurse with wilderness first aid training, joined a search team on May 25th, accompanied by a sheriff's deputy. According to the deputy's field notes, she maintained remarkable composure, methodically scanning the terrain while calling her sister's name at regular intervals. "We call it the processing phase," explained search psychologist Dr. Helen Marquez, who consulted on the case. "Family members need to physically participate to see the challenges firsthand, even when professional teams have already covered the same ground." While the official search grid expanded outward in systematic patterns, family-initiated searches focused on areas Dana had mentioned in texts and social media posts before her hike, specific rock formations she had wanted to photograph, vantage points she had researched. On May 26th, Dana's ex-boyfriend arrived from Seattle to join the search effort. His statement to investigators added a troubling dimension. "Dana mentioned a man who seemed to be following the same trails as her on 2 different hikes in Colorado last month. She wasn't alarmed, just thought it was odd. I told her to be careful. Hiking alone." This information prompted a review of visitor logs and security footage from the days surrounding Reynolds' disappearance. 3 solo male hikers were identified who had visited the park within 48 hours of Reynolds. All were later contacted and cleared of any connection to the case. The psychological weight of the search began to show in the operational logs. Team rotations increased in frequency as fatigue set in. Sarah Reynolds refused to leave the command post except for brief sleep periods in her vehicle. Her methodical notes from those days, later included in the case file, show decreasing handwriting quality as exhaustion mounted. On the evening of May 26th, the search operation logs note: family provided additional locations, cave systems, and secondary trails not on official maps, sources unknown, limited resources redirected to investigate. While they measured distances, she measured silence. From May 27 to June 3, 2019, the search for Dana Reynolds expanded beyond conventional parameters. Search logs documented 17 miles squared covered, no new finds. Tracker Eli Mitchell, brought in from the National Park Service with his Belgian Malinois, Sierra, specialized in detecting human presence in wilderness environments. "Dogs work differently in desert conditions," Mitchell explained in his report. "Scent particles behave unpredictably with thermal air currents rising off rock surfaces." Sierra's bark echoed off the sandstone cliffs as she alerted to a possible scent trail on May 29th, approximately 3.8 miles northeast of Reynolds' last confirmed location. The scent-marking dust kicked up by the dog's movements caught the afternoon light as Mitchell followed, experiencing the distinct dehydration buzz in his ears that comes after days in the field. The dog's alert led to a narrow canyon where footprints were discovered, partially preserved under an overhang. Plaster casts made on site revealed a boot pattern consistent with Reynolds' hiking boots, but forensic analysis later determined the prints were likely 2 weeks old, predating her disappearance. By day 10 of the search, statistical models placed survival probability below 5% without shelter and water. The operational classification shifted to recovery, though this terminology was carefully avoided in communications with the family. On May 31st, a technical climbing team accessed a series of ledges 400 feet above the canyon floor. Their helmet camera footage, preserved in the case file, shows the methodical search of shallow rock shelters and crevices. No evidence was discovered. The weather deteriorated again on June 2nd, with temperatures reaching 109 degrees Celsius by midday. 2 search team members required medical evacuation for heat exhaustion. The incident commander's field notes indicate risk to searchers now exceeding probability of successful recovery. On June 3rd, after 17 days of continuous operations covering approximately 22 square miles of difficult terrain, the active search was officially suspended. The case file notes, transition to investigative status pending new evidence. Sarah Reynolds received the news with quiet devastation. Her written response, included in the case file, reads simply, "The desert hasn't taken her. Someone has. Keep looking." The statistics appeared conclusive. In desert terrain without water, human survival beyond 7 days approaches 0. Yet investigators noted troubling inconsistencies: the complete absence of equipment, the lack of scavenger activity, the failure of aerial thermal imaging to locate remains in a relatively contained geographical area. Sheriff Kay authorized monthly flyovers of the search area throughout the summer of 2019. Fall brought cooler temperatures and renewed ground searches by volunteers, coordinated through a Facebook group established by Sarah Reynolds. Winter weather ended field operations until spring 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic further complicated search efforts. 16 months after Reynolds' disappearance, the case status was officially changed to missing person, suspicious circumstances, based on the complete absence of physical evidence typical in exposure cases. Even trained dogs stopped leading, scent ended its stone. On September 12, 2022, 3 years and 4 months after Dana Reynolds disappeared, hiker Leon Varga discovered a weathered backpack, partially buried in a slot canyon 6 miles east of the original search perimeter. The narrow canyon, accessible only through technical descent or a convoluted approach route, had not been included in the initial search grid. Varga's 911 call, recorded at 15:28, captured the gravity of the moment. Found equipment? Appears aged. Red backpack matches the missing hiker flyers. It's wedged under a boulder. Looks deliberate, not accidental. The drip of canyon moisture created a rhythmic backdrop to the call. Varga's flashlight glare illuminated the scene as he described it to dispatchers, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. According to the incident report, Varga was a geology graduate student conducting field research and had descended into the canyon seeking rock samples. First responders reached the site at 17:45. Deputy Miguel Santos documented the scene. Backpack partially exposed, consistent with brand and color described in the Reynolds case. Contents appear disturbed. Location suggests intentional concealment rather than abandonment. The discovery site, a narrow section of canyon where flash flooding would be catastrophic during rain events, raised immediate questions. It lay miles from Reynolds' planned route, in terrain requiring technical skills, beyond her documented experience level. The backpack's position, wedged beneath a 200-pound boulder, suggested human placement rather than animal dispersal. Forensic technicians documented the scene through the night, using specialized lighting to search for additional evidence. The technical recovery took 7 hours, with the backpack and surrounding soil carefully preserved for laboratory analysis. Inside the weathered pack, investigators found Reynolds's driver's license, credit cards, a damaged cell phone, and torn clothing fragments. The phone, despite extensive environmental damage, provided crucial data when forensic specialists extracted its memory chip. Location data placed the device in this canyon on May 18, 2019, the day Reynolds disappeared, at 14:22, 3 hours after her last cell tower ping. The backpack's discovery shifted the investigation from tragic wilderness accident to potential criminal case. The canyon location lay outside cell reception, explaining the absence of tower pings, but required navigation skills and equipment inconsistent with Reynolds's planned day hike. Most significant was an anomaly noted by forensic technician Dr. James Reinhardt. Soil composition under the pack differs from surrounding canyon floor sediment. Analysis indicates the pack was placed there between 6 to 8 months ago, not 3 years ago. It had been stored elsewhere. This finding suggested someone had kept the backpack for nearly 3 years before placing it in the canyon, a deliberate act unrelated to Reynolds's initial disappearance. Field notes from the recovery operation observed another crucial detail. Despite the pack's exposure to the elements, the contents showed different weathering patterns, suggesting they had not remained together continuously. Sheriff Kay authorized a complete resweep of the canyon system, now classified as a crime scene rather than a search area. Accidents discover what investigations miss. From September 13 to 20th, 2022, evidence processing transformed Dana Reynolds from missing hiker to victim. The property receipt 2200931E, filed by the forensics lab, cataloged the recovered items: backpack, tent fragment, femur, left. Forensic anthropologist Dr. Eileen Chow led the examination of the remains. The Tyvek rustle of protective coverings filled the quiet laboratory as teams processed the materials. Under the fluorescent hum of examination lights, each item told part of a disturbing narrative. The recorder clicked steadily, documenting each observation. The femur exhibits tool marks, consistent with non-predatory dismemberment, Dr. Chow stated in her preliminary report. Cuts appear to have been made with a serrated blade approximately 7 to 9 inches in length. Weathering patterns indicate the bone was protected from exposure until relatively recently. DNA analysis confirmed the remains belonged to Dana Reynolds. The official manner of death was classified as homicide based on the evidence of intentional dismemberment and concealment. The backpack contents yielded critical evidence. Soil samples embedded in the fabric matched neither the recovery site nor the original search area, suggesting the pack had been stored in a third location. Fibers found inside included synthetic carpet material, not consistent with outdoor gear. Most telling was the recovery of a partial fingerprint from inside a zippered compartment. The print, preserved in a location protected from the elements, was uploaded to AFIS, Automated Fingerprint Identification System. Initial database searches yielded no matches. The tent fragment, a section of nylon with distinctive burn marks, provided another investigative avenue. Laboratory analysis identified the burn pattern as consistent with cigarette damage rather than campfire or cooking accidents. Dana Reynolds was not a smoker, according to family statements. "We're not looking at a wilderness accident," Sheriff Kay told investigators during the September 18th briefing. "We're looking at a predator who knows the backcountry. A microscopic examination of Reynolds' recovered cell phone revealed attempt marks on the SIM card slot, indicating someone had tried to remove the card. The phone's battery had been disconnected, explaining why location tracking had failed during the original search. On September 20th, the forensic team completed their preliminary findings. The official report noted, "Evidence is consistent with captivity rather than immediate death. Nutritional deficiencies evident in the bone structure suggest the victim survived for an extended period under restricted circumstances." This conclusion devastated the Reynolds family. Sarah Reynolds, who had maintained hope for 3 years that her sister might somehow have survived, was present when investigators delivered the findings. "All this time we imagined her lost or injured," she told reporters later. "The reality is so much worse. Someone took her, kept her alive, and knew we were searching nearby." The investigation was reclassified as an active homicide case. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit was consulted to develop offender characteristics based on the evidence pattern. Their preliminary profile suggested someone familiar with the area, experienced in wilderness navigation, and opportunistic rather than having a pre-selected victim. Specimen cataloged, identity re-entered the system. On September 22, 2022, the investigation uncovered a shallow karst cave mapped in the San Rafael Swell, approximately 3.8 miles from where Reynolds' remains were discovered. The cave entrance, concealed behind a natural rock formation, was not visible from established trails or aerial surveys. Detective Antonio Molina's body cam footage, timestamped 1428, captured the moment of discovery. Possible habitation, remains of rope, can opener, bedding. The scrape of boots against a rock echoed in the confined space as the tactical team cleared the cave. The sweep of flashlight beams revealed a disturbing tableau of long-term occupancy. The cave, approximately 15 feet deep and 8 feet wide at its widest point, contained evidence of human captivity. A sleeping area had been created using a foam pad and tattered blankets. Food containers, primarily canned goods, were stacked in one corner. Most telling was a crude restraint system fashioned from climbing rope anchored to the rock wall. Subject established a habitable space, Molina narrated for the record as his team documented the scene. The static of his CR radio punctuated the otherwise eerie silence of the cave. Evidence suggests long-term confinement rather than temporary shelter. Forensic teams cataloged 134 individual items from the cave, including 27 empty food cans with various expiration dates spanning from April 2019 to December 2019, a plastic water jug modified with a filtration system, 3 prescription medication bottles with the labels removed, a disposable camera with 8 exposures used, a page torn from a hiking guidebook showing the Goblin Valley Trail system, a hair elastic containing strands matching Reynolds' DNA profile. The cave's isolation served both to conceal its occupant and to prevent escape. The surrounding terrain featured sheer cliff faces on 3 sides, with the only approach route requiring technical climbing knowledge. A natural spring 400 yards from the cave entrance provided a water source. Environmental analysis determined the cave maintained a relatively stable temperature between 55 and 70 degrees year-round, making long-term survival possible. Sunlight never directly entered the space due to its orientation, explaining why aerial thermal imaging had failed to detect heat signatures during the original search. Most significant was the discovery of a makeshift calendar scratched into the cave wall. The marks appeared to track days, with groups of 7 separated by longer lines. The calendar showed approximately 7 months of entries before stopping abruptly. This wasn't opportunistic, observed FBI behavioral analyst Dr. Tamara Wilson, who examined the cave site. The location was scouted and prepared. The perpetrator knew exactly what he was doing and had likely done it before. The disposable camera, when developed, revealed 7 photographs. 6 showed the surrounding landscape from the cave entrance. The 7th was a partial image of a man's arm with a distinctive tattoo, a geometric pattern running from wrist to elbow. By cross-referencing the tattoo against criminal databases, investigators identified a potential suspect, John Raymond Haskins, 42, a former wilderness guide with convictions for stalking and false imprisonment in Colorado. Haskins had been paroled in January 2019, 4 months before Reynolds' disappearance. Inside, time had been measured in empty cans. Between September 25th and October 3rd, 2022, the investigation focused on John Raymond Haskins. The arrest affidavit filed on September 27th referenced DNA evidence linking Haskins to materials found in the cave. Hair samples recovered from the bedding contained his DNA, and fingerprints on food containers matched his records. Dr. Mira Shah, a behavioral profiler with the FBI, reviewed Haskins' history and the evidence from the Reynolds case. The recorder beeped steadily as she dictated her analysis. The shuffle of papers punctuated her observations, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across the case files spread before her. Subject displays predatory pattern consistent with wilderness stalker typology, Dr. Shaw noted in her report. Previous convictions show escalation from observation to contact to confinement. The geographic isolation of the Reynolds abduction represents the culmination of this progression. Haskins' background provided disturbing context. A skilled backcountry guide for 15 years, he possessed intimate knowledge of remote canyon systems throughout Utah and Colorado. His previous convictions involved stalking female hikers, photographing them without consent, and in 2016 attempting to detain a woman on a remote trail in Rocky Mountain National Park. Cell phone records placed Haskins in the Goblin Valley area on May 17 and 18, 2019. Credit card transactions showed he purchased supplies at a grocery store in Green River on May 16th, the same day Reynolds arrived in the area. Most damning was evidence recovered from a storage unit rented by Haskins in Moab, Utah. Inside, investigators discovered camping equipment matching fragments found with Reynolds' remains, topographic maps with marked locations corresponding to the cave site, and a journal containing entries about selecting and acquiring hikers. One journal entry dated May 18, 2019, read simply, "Red Pack, Solo, Perfect Timing." On October 1st, 2022, police arrested Haskins at a campground near Lake Powell, approximately 120 miles from Goblin Valley. The arrest report noted he had been living intermittently in wilderness areas since August 2022, when Reynolds' remains were first discovered. In his possession was a newspaper clipping about the case. During interrogation, Haskins maintained silence regarding Reynolds. However, when shown photographs of the cave site, investigators noted a visible reaction, what the interview transcript described as recognition followed by calculation. Forensic analysis of Haskins' vehicle revealed trace evidence linking him directly to Reynolds. Fibers matching her hiking clothes were found in the trunk carpet. GPS data extracted from his navigation system showed multiple visits to the cave site between May 2019 and December 2019. The timeline constructed by investigators suggested Reynolds had been held captive for approximately 7 months before her death. The abrupt end to the calendar markings in the cave coincided with severe winter weather in December 2019, which would have made the remote location difficult to access. Dr. Shaw's assessment concluded. The perpetrator viewed the wilderness as an accomplice. Its isolation, challenging terrain, and natural barriers served both to facilitate the crime and to conceal it afterward. The landscape became an extension of his control. Predator and desert spoke the same language: silence. Between 2023 and 2024, the prosecution of John Raymond Haskins moved through the judicial system. Court transcript notation: State v. Haskins, Exhibit C retained. References the physical evidence presented during the trial, including the calendar markings from the cave wall, preserved as castings. Portions of the proceedings were sealed due to the graphic nature of the evidence. In the fluorescent-lit courtroom, papers shuffled between attorneys as exhibits were presented. The steady hum of the HVAC system provided a constant backdrop to testimony. Occasional coughs from spectators punctuated the clinical recitation of evidence. Prosecutor Janet Lowe built a methodical case around geographic and forensic evidence. During her summation, she cited search statistics to illustrate the calculated nature of the crime. The perpetrator selected a location 3.8 miles outside the standard search radius for a missing hiker. He understood that 94% of search resources focus within 3 miles of the last known position. This was an opportunity. It was predatory expertise. The trial revealed the extent of Haskins' preparation. Topographic maps found in his possession showed a systematic survey of remote areas throughout Utah's canyon country, with notations about visibility, accessibility, and proximity to trails frequented by solo hikers. Forensic testimony established that Reynolds had survived in captivity for approximately 7 months. Dr. Elaine Chow's analysis of the recovered remains indicated nutritional stress consistent with restricted diet and evidence of healed fractures to the fingers and radius, likely defensive injuries. The most disturbing evidence came from Haskins' own writings, discovered in a waterproof container at his campsite. The journal contained entries tracking multiple female hikers across different parks between 2017 and 2019, with notations about their routines, equipment, and apparent experience level. One entry, dated April 2019, read, "Red-haired woman North Trail, watches birds, always stops at the same overlook, 3rd time this month, pattern established." Sarah Reynolds attended each day of the trial, often accompanied by Dana's former colleagues and friends. In her victim impact statement, she addressed not only her sister's death, but the 3 years of uncertainty. "You took her twice. First from the trail, then from our hope. For 3 years. I imagined her still alive somewhere, still fighting to come home. I searched for her while she was already gone." Statistical evidence presented during the trial revealed a troubling pattern in wilderness disappearances. Between 2010 and 2020, 27 solo hikers vanished from remote trails across the American Southwest. 18 remained missing. The prosecution suggested Haskins may have been responsible for other disappearances, though insufficient evidence existed to bring additional charges. On March 18, 2024, after 7 days of deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict on charges of kidnapping, false imprisonment, and first-degree murder. The judge sentenced Haskins to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. As the verdict was read, Haskins displayed no visible reaction. Following the trial, the Emery County Sheriff's Office established new protocols for wilderness searches, including expanded initial search radii and dedicated focus on non-natural terrain features that could serve as confinement locations. The case became required study for search and rescue certification in Utah. Verdict read, "Desert remained unchanged In 2025, a production team returned to Goblin Valley State Park to document the site of Dana Reynolds' last known movements. The GPS coordinates 38.5739 degree N, 110.707 W marked in the original ranger documentation and cross-verified with report 19042 led to the trailhead where she began her hike. Ranger Mark Dorsey, who had observed Reynolds signing the trail register 6 years earlier, now supervised the visitor center. He walked the production team to the start of the Entrada Loop Trail, his footsteps crunching on the red gravel. The wind whistled over sandstone formations, carrying the faint metallic creak of the park gate in the distance. Thunder rumbled faintly on the horizon. Another spring storm approaching. After what happened, people still come, Dorsey noted, gesturing toward the visitor center. But they hike differently now, rarely alone, always telling someone exactly when they'll be back. The trail register, protected inside its wooden case, remained at the trailhead. A new sign had been added nearby. Area closed for investigation. Still stood at the entrance to Wild Horse Wash, though the active investigation had concluded years ago. Park administration had decided to leave it in place, a permanent reminder. The Reynolds case changed search protocols throughout the National Park Service. The wilderness predator profile developed from the investigation became standard training for rangers. Trailhead security cameras, once considered intrusive to the natural experience, had been installed at remote access points throughout the park system. Sarah Reynolds established the Dana Reynolds Wilderness Safety Foundation, which provided emergency beacons to solo hikers free of charge. The foundation's logo, a bright red backpack, appeared on trailhead signs throughout Utah's park system. The wilderness itself wasn't the danger, Sarah explained in a 2024 interview. It was what the isolation permitted. Dana loved these spaces for their solitude. Someone used that same quality to harm her. The Haskins case led to the review of 23 unsolved disappearances across 5 states. 2 additional cases were subsequently linked to him through GPS data from his vehicle, though insufficient evidence existed for formal charges. The review was ongoing. In the years following Reynolds' disappearance, visitor logs showed a 42% decrease in solo hikers registering at Goblin Valley. Those who did hike alone now, overwhelmingly, reported carrying satellite communication devices, a direct response to the case. At the trailhead, the production team photographed the visitor register. When opened to the archives section, the page from May 18, 2019, had been preserved behind protective film. Dana Reynolds' signature remained visible. D. Reynolds, Entrada Loop, written in blue ink that had faded but remained legible beneath the protective covering. The entry appeared ordinary, one name among dozens who had walked the same path. In the official case file, now closed, every document ended with an evidence code. But in the desert, nothing truly ended. It only eroded and transformed. The Reynolds case had changed search protocols, ranger training, and hiker behavior, but not the sand. The endless wind still sculpted the same formations that had stood silent witness to countless passages, both safe returns and tragic absences. Her signature remains, weathered but legible. Ink beneath the dust